So whether we're talking about a sine curve or a cosine curve, the basic equation, basic formula is still the same, which is y is equal to a times the function plus d, and the argument gets changed by having some number that is multiplied and something that is subtracted. Okay. Let's see if I can write that neater. Okay. Now, notice that as we're doing this in the equation, the phase shift of the equation, right, the effect of C happens before the period is changed. And that's why this is in parentheses. We'll get to that in a minute and you'll see what I'm talking about. But this is what a sine curve looks like if it's just y is equal to the sine of x. Okay. And if all I do is multiply the entire function by 2, it stretches it vertically, right, this way and this way, without changing anything else. Whereas here, the maximum and the minimum were only one space away from the midline. If I multiply the entire function by 2, now the maximum is 2 and the minimum is negative 2. Okay? So that's what A does. So now let's look at what D does, because that's another thing that happens to the entire function. So it's what controls the motion up and down. Okay? Here we've stretched it. Here we're going to actually shift it. We're going to change its position 2 spaces up, 2 spaces in the positive direction. So that means the midline, which before was 0, now is positive 2. This number represents the midline. This number represents the amplitude. So now what happens if I multiply x by 2? Well, now that's going to change the horizontal attributes of the curve. Here, the period is from here to here, and that's 2 pi. From here to here, that's a space of 2 pi. From here to here, again, a space of 2 pi. That's what the period is. But here, if we multiply by 2, if b is equal to 2, then the new period is going to be the reciprocal of b times the old period, which is 2 pi. That means that the period now for the new function, the way we've changed it here, period is going to be pi. And if you check here, that's what happens. From here, the entire cycle going up and down and back again is finished in pi spaces instead of in 2 pi spaces. And in fact, by the time you get to 2 pi, you've done this whole thing twice. Now if you look, I did something a little odd here. This is not in the same form as this equation that I gave you. There's something different about the format here than the format I gave you.
It's plus C instead of minus C.
That's part of it. Yeah.
So for B, isn't it supposed to be 2 pi over B? So the second to the last one, it's just 2x.
Right. Look at what we've got going on here is B is multiplying x minus C. Right? And I told you it's a big deal here that this has to happen before you do the multiplication. And that's not what I've got here. If we needed to rewrite this, this would be the sine of 2 times x plus pi over 8 plus 2. What would happen here is this 2 would be factored out, or written the other way, would have to be distributed in to look like this. But now we have it in the right form. And you were absolutely right. C is, right, we've got x plus something instead of x minus something. So in truth, in order to really put it into the form we want, it would look like this. The distinction's important. It needs to be in this form for the numbers to mean what we're saying they mean. So the 2, right, the only thing that's changed from here to here is that we're changing the position of the graph left to right. And notice that what we're doing is we're moving the starting point, right, to the left. How much? Well, not half, because that'd be half, and not a quarter, because that'd be a quarter, but actually pi over 8 to the left. Everything else from here to here is the same. Okay. Finally, let's look at this. Can you rewrite this so that it's in this form? It'll look like this. Y is equal to 2 sine of 1/2 x plus pi over 2 plus 2. So I've done two things here. I've changed how it affects the frequency. Right? So now notice that instead of having a frequency of pi, we've got a frequency that's much longer here. We're going from here up, down, all the way down to here. Right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 pi. We've doubled the period instead of cutting it in half by this. Right? We've changed the period so that only 1/2 of this curve fits in the 2 pi that the whole thing would normally fit in. But also, because now we have it in this form, we can see that we've moved the entire thing. Instead of starting here, it now starts way over here at negative pi over 2. Yeah.
So the pi over 2 is the phase shift?
Yes.
So you just cut it in half, or you multiplied it by 2?
Well, basically what I did was I rewrote it so that this number would be, so that b would be something I multiplied x plus something by without x having a coefficient. Okay? So that means the form of this equation is y is equal to a times the sine of b times x minus c plus d. If it fits this formula, if it looks like this form of equation, then each one of these letters does what we said it did.